Hello, everyone. Welcome to Independence live interview with Reverend Dr. Amber Mattingly. My name is Elizabeth Fott, and I am a volunteer with Independent. Independent is a nonprofit organization that provides military spouses with expert wellness resources for mind, body, community, and purpose. For this conversation, also, there is a worksheet available to follow along, and the link will be in the comments. So for anyone listening, also please free to ask any questions you have in the comments. Reverend Dr. Mattingly, it is an honor talking with you today, and we are all looking forward to hearing what you have to say about parenting preteens. First, could you tell us a little bit about your background and your journey to this point?
Yes, thank you. It is such a privilege to be with each of you here this morning for me in Texas, but wherever you are, maybe it's afternoon already. But thank you for the privilege of being in this sacred space with you. Here's a little bit about me. Sometimes it's hard for me to talk about myself because it's just one of those situations where you're like, how much do I say? What do I say? But I also recognize that this is my opportunity to convince you that it is worth your next hour to be here with me and listen and explore some of these ideas. So, a little bit about me. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Education with a specific focus on health science studies from Baylor University. I also hold a Master of Divinity from George W. Truett Theological Seminary. And in 2020, I graduated with my Doctor of Ministry from Claremont School of Theology. Now, my dissertation's title was From the Pew to the Mat, Seeing and Hearing the Outsider. And so all that means is that I focused on creating safer spaces for people from any or no religious background to engage in spiritual conversations. Now, I am also a yoga teacher, and I am certified and trained in Ashtanga, adaptive yoga, and trauma-informed yoga practices. I'm also the pastor of a beautiful little congregation called Heights Christian Church right outside of Houston. And through my leadership, this beautiful church decided to merge with a sister congregation this year instead of going through the long process of closing its doors and really sunsetting its ministry. I'm a mother to a neurodiverse child and to another child who sees the world through the lens of music and theater. I'm the best friend to my husband, Pastor Chad Mattingly, who is the pastor of Kingwood Christian Church right out here where we live. Now, more importantly, and I think this is what you will be interested in, but my work with middle school students and those who identify as spiritually fluid was chosen to participate as one of the 10 leaders in the first SENT cohort put on by the National Benevolent Association. Through this year-long cohort, I was given funding to work with an editor on my middle school curriculum called CPR. Now, CPR enhances a student's innate ability to live with clarity, compassion, and radical amazement. And so if you want any more information about any of that, you can also find me on my website at ambermattinglylivefree.com.
Well, Amber, you have a wealth of knowledge, and I am so excited to listen to what you have to say about parenting.
I am excited and a little terrified to be here because it sounds like I've done a lot in my life, but one of the things I said I would never do was do a parenting talk and share with other parents, because my experience of parenting conversations was I would go sit and listen and think, this has nothing to do with me. It seems like a one size fits all, and apparently my kids don't fit into that normal size. And so with excitement and a little bit of trepidation, I am here with you to just share some things that I have personally learned and hope that maybe one little thing helps you on your journey of parenting. Well, I bet if I polled this group that to see who is looking forward to or who is currently enjoying parenting their middle school student, then maybe most of you would send me that little green face emoji that's like the puking emoji. If you want to, you can go ahead and in our comments, you can send me a little emoji of maybe how you're feeling about parenting a middle school student. Well, you are not alone, my friends. I too dreaded my own children's experience of puberty. I feared that I was not up to the challenge. And I thought that I needed to armor up and gird my loins and prepare to confront this emotional enemy in my home. And so today, what if I told you that there was a way that both you and your preteen can flourish during this important season of life? Would you believe me? Well, today I'm going to share 3 key ingredients that will help you and your child thrive. Plus, as a bonus, if you stay till the very end, then I'm going to introduce you to a cheap product that every caregiver must have during these adolescent years.
I cannot wait to hear what that is. So, Reverend Dr. Mattingly, when did you find this important passion of yours? Because the little bit that we've been able to talk previously, you have already given me a lot of insight and information to take away for parenting. So, when did you find this passion?
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, I have been working in the wellness industry for about 25 years. Now, I define wellness as encompassing the care of the body, the mind, our emotions, tending to our social connections, and setting your spirit free through the creation of healthy habits. Now, in 2017, I stepped away from a more traditional job and entered into yoga teacher training. And I will say that for me, that was a pivotal moment to bringing me here with you today. Because right after I finished that training, I noticed that an underserved community in the wellness industry is our preteens. Now, I wasn't blaming anyone because I recognized that I didn't know much about serving this age group. So I thought I would do what sort of I do. This is my pattern, but I thought I'd do a little research so that I could learn from organizations who were excelling in this field. Now, I will tell you, I was also selfishly looking around my area for resources because my own children were entering middle school. So I had a stake in the outcome. Well, I decided to take that posture of a learner, that posture of a student, and just see what I would find. And so I started really close to home and then I extended my boundaries out as I went. And so I looked at my own fitness facility and I realized that they had classes for our upper teenagers and classes for elementary students, but nothing for this preteen age. And then I looked because I was a yoga teacher. And so I thought, well, maybe the yoga community has classes for this age, but I couldn't find a single person who offered classes for this age group. Then my curiosity was really piqued at this point. And so I branched out to look at, well, what was available for after school programs? And through some deeper research, I realized that government funding for after school programs actually ended right at the beginning or after the first year in middle school. And so then, of course, as a minister, I turned to look at our churches for resources. Now, our churches didn't offer programming on character development or how to care for the body and how to take care of the mind. They did offer youth groups, which are wonderful if that is a part of your faith tradition. But even in those settings, a lot of churches have to put our preteens together with our teenagers. And so we're missing the opportunity for that specialized care for this age.
That is very true. So, what did you decide to do with the information that you've collected?
Great question. Well, in all this research, I realized that there are really very few models for success. They're out there, but they're very few. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to jump right in and I'm going to start offering mind, body, and spirit wellness classes for middle school students. So, with this intention in mind, I wanted to go right to the source. I wanted to hear our students' perspectives and receive new information directly from them. And some of the first comments that I had from parents were, thank God, I've been looking all over for something like this. And I couldn't find anything until so and so on Facebook connected me to your page, and then that's how we joined your group. And then I heard from students that these small groups that we were forming were the most accepting place that they participated in all week. Well, as you can imagine, that gave me enormous energy to keep going. Well, so I shifted my posture to that of a student and allowed this curiosity to continue to grow. And a question popped into my mind about why we avoid extending care to this age group. Now, historically, this time of life was a time of celebration. Girls would develop and get their periods, and all the women in the community would gather around to celebrate and give them a place to rest and nourish their body, give advice, and welcome them into this new season of life. Historically, boys participated in some type of rite of passage with the men in the community. Now, some churches and groups like the Red Tent still have special curriculums or events for this age group, but for the most part, we are no longer a society that celebrates this transition in life. In fact, we fear it. We dread it. We want to close our eyes and click our heels 3 times to see if it can just magically be over. So, part of what we're talking about today is that what we bring with us as parents into parenting this age group is part of the challenge. If we stay with this perspective of dread and fear, then we miss out on one of life's greatest gifts, both to ourselves and to our beloved tweens. Well, as I shifted into this posture of a student and allowed the curiosity to grow, I looked at all the research and decided that I needed a new mindset. I needed to set an intention that could keep me focused. So I decided that my intention with working with this age group was to create something that celebrated who they are. Stating that a little more clearly, I would say that I set the stage for celebration. Well, one of the authors that I most admire for writing about this stage of life is Daniel Siegel, who is a neuropsychiatrist. And this is his book. Daniel Siegel wrote a book called Brainstorm: The Power and Purpose of the Teenage Brain. Now, this book really helped change my perspective because in this book, he says that the adolescent years are the most creative time of our life. Now, he is looking at the adolescent years from age 12 to age 24. So it's way more expansive of just the middle school years. But he says that really, if we allow the brain and allow this creative mind to develop during these years, then we set the stage for a resilient and robust adult life. So, as adults, we have to shift our perspective away from fearing the boundary testing, the emotions, and the seeming wild desire to try new things that for us seems completely out of control. We have to see that all these things are a way for them to develop the creative brain. And this is what will set them apart as the leaders of our future. And isn't that what we want for our children and for our world? I think we're in desperate need for creative change makers. And the amazing thing is that they live right in our homes.
Well, thank you for all of that. That is very fascinating and also very inspiring. And so, my question is, how do parents do this?
That is a great question. And I'm putting my glasses on for this part because we're going to get really down into it. So now we're going to talk through the 3 key ingredients. And in fact, I've already talked you through them without you knowing about it. Now, these are tools that you already have. It's not something new that you haven't ever heard of, but sometimes it just helps for somebody else to point them out. So take a deep breath. Okay, here we go. So let's start with the first key ingredient that will help you shift away from the fear that we all experience when we think about parenting during the middle school years. This first key ingredient may seem counterintuitive, but it is humility. Now, remember in my story a little while ago, when I started thinking about middle school, that I recognized that I did not know how to successfully offer a resource that would be meaningful to this group. So I listened to the research, I gathered students and listened to their needs. And instead of being a leader who thinks I'm going to come in with all the answers, instead I shifted to the posture of someone who is interested in learning. Now, something that guided me during this time is the definition of humility as written by the Greater Good Science Center at the University of California, Berkeley. They write that humility is about being able to see and accept your strengths and your limitations without defensiveness or judgment, as well as being open-minded to others' perspectives and to new information. Now, that's a mouthful, but it is so important to see and accept our own limitations without defensiveness or judgment. And I love how they put that and being open-minded to others' perspectives and to receiving new information. Now, here is an example of my learning the importance of humility, and maybe you'll connect to this story. Well, when my daughter was in middle school, she would come home with all these stories about all the drama going on with her friends and with her friend groups, and maybe she even overheard teachers in some kind of drama. A lot of times it was about boys with her friends and who liked who, and oh, another girl liked this boy. Well, she would talk and talk and talk until I wasn't listening anymore. I was, mentally writing my grocery list or planning the ingredients that I needed for dinner. Now, most often, if I did listen and if I did hear her, then I would stop her to offer my 10 best ways to solve her problem. Or I would say something like, well, here's how you can fix the situation. Now, I felt good, because I felt like I was helping her, offering some wise words. But what I didn't realize is that I was really frustrating her. Now, one day, she was sharing with me all the stories, and as I started to open my mouth to offer her a solution, I paused just long enough to notice a change in her eyes and that her lips pursed. So I stopped myself and I asked her why the sudden change in expression. And her eyes just immediately filled with tears, and she blurted out, "I don't need you to fix things. I just want you to listen." Well, friends, you and I have lived through a lot, and we have wise words to share with our middle school students, but during this time, the most important thing that you can do to keep your relationship flourishing, to create this safe enough space, and to help their creative minds develop, the best thing you can do is just humbly listen. You see, sometimes we have lived through our own experiences of middle school, and sometimes we react to our students' experience through our own lens of middle school. But what we want to do is to be open-minded to hearing their perspective and to receiving new information from them. And so the wonderful thing is that the pressure is off of us to say the right things or do all the right things. And instead, we're giving our students space for their creative brain to develop. Now, I'm always interested in, well, what is the payoff for being a humble listener? There is a payoff. The Greater Good Science Center at the University of California states this: when we meet people who radiate humility, our shoulders relax, our heartbeat slows, because we know that we are being fully accepted, seen, and heard. Now, when we shift away from judgment to recognize that we don't know everything and are open to new perspectives, our preteens will feel safe in our presence. Now, I think this is probably very important to military families because your home changes, your location changes, school and teachers and friends change, but you are the constant presence in their lives. Now, this is easier said than done, right? But remember, these key ingredients are not new tools. We all have the ability to listen, but we need to develop this habit. And maybe for some of us, for me, it was a brand new habit. So, following author Charles Duhigg's advice in his book, The Power of Habit, he talks about how in order to form a new habit, you need three things. You need a cue for that habit, you need the behavior that you want to engage in, and you need a reward. Well, we already know we want to be good listeners. We already sense that the reward is that our children's shoulders relax, their heartbeat slows, and we create this safe space for them. But what is the cue? So I invite you to consider that wherever it is that you hang out with your preteen, wherever it is that the conversations happen, maybe it's in the car, maybe it's in the kitchen or in the living room, that maybe you hang a sock up as a reminder that when you want to open your mouth, that instead you should put a sock in it. And tell yourself, I am a humble listener. Might even be a funny conversation if your preteen asks you, why are you hanging a sock on the rear view mirror? Now that we have put a sock in it, right, let's get to the next key ingredient, which is curiosity. You heard that word come up over and over again in the story that I told at the beginning. So you heard how once I opened my mind to new perspectives and research and to listening to my students, that then curiosity was actually the energy that propelled me forward. And this is the energy that I want you to carry into your relationship with your middle school student who is changing and blossoming and whose brain is lit up with creativity. So let's be curious about who they are becoming and how they see the world. But to be quite honest, before we can get there, we have to start exercising the muscle of curiosity with what is going on inside us. And so, one of the questions we can ask ourselves is, why do we fear parenting during this time of life? Well, I think it's because most of us had a terrible experience in middle school. Now, if your experience of middle school was celebratory and affirming, I need you to step up and lead this group. Now, expert Daniel Siegel in his book, he asked a group of adults how they would describe this time period, how they felt about that time period when they were that age. And here are the words that this adult group used: isolated, crazed, confused, a mess, alone, terrified, wild, out of control, lost, seeking, frightened. Now, maybe you would like to add a word in the chat that best describes how you felt as you were a preteen. Well, here's what I noticed was happening to me. As my daughter entered middle school, I felt an internal resistance to the drama, the tears, and the maturation of her body. Remember, I already said I felt like I needed to armor up and gird my loins and confront this emotional enemy in my home. It was like my body was bracing for impact. And I kept thinking, why does she have to grow up? Why can't she just stay little and free from all the stress and all the worry? And so I had to get curious about why I felt this resistance in my body. And so I spoke with various counselors and a medical doctor who pointed out something very interesting. Now, the counselor said that what was happening is that my body was remembering this time in my own life and was inviting me to heal some of the unhealthy perspectives and habits that I created during this time of life. And so, as always, it's an invitation, and I can resist it or I can accept the invitation. And so I decided to accept this invitation and thought about my own preteen years. You see, during my own middle school years, there was a lot of fighting between my parents. And so I consistently felt alone, like I didn't have a place to go to talk. I remember that I took on way too many adult responsibilities just trying to be helpful to my siblings and to my parents, but being very frightened and overwhelmed by all of these responsibilities. Now, this is not to blame or shame my family and my parents with what they were going through. This is just what happened to me. At school, there was this constant drama. I could totally relate to my daughter's experience of the constant drama with friends and friend groups and boyfriends. And that made me feel even more out of control. And so I turned to controlling the one area of my life that I felt that I could control, which was my eating. And so in middle school, I developed an eating disorder and had a body image issues. I have worked through the healing process, and of course, I see it as a spiral of healing, not a linear direction. And that's something that we could explore later. But I've worked through this spiral of healing over the years, but my body was telling me that this resistance that I felt towards my daughter's experience was actually reminding me of my past and that there is more healing available. So, as I use the power of curiosity to explore my own middle school years, I could now see why I felt this resistance in my body as I approached my own daughter's preteen years. Now, the thing that the medical doctor added to this is that this medical doctor pointed out that as my daughter was blossoming with fresh hormones, that in fact my body was beginning to sunset the reproductive years. So as she was beginning the journey, mine was coming to an end. But both stages hold enormous change for the body, emotional shifts, and opportunities for creativity. So, as we put a sock in it and our mouths get quiet, we have a lot going on in our bodies and in our minds that we need to get curious about. And so, what is the payoff for this curiosity? Well, let me give you an example. And this example has to do with, okay, we've done the inner work, become curious about ourselves, and now we can extend that curiosity to our preteens. Well, one day, my daughter got into the car after school and was clearly out of her mind. She started talking about how at lunch this girl was not being very kind. And I could tell that what this girl had done is pushed all of her buttons. And so my daughter, my beautiful daughter, turned to me and said, "Mom, I looked this girl in the face and I called her a bitch." Okay, push pause on what was going on in my car. Immediately, what happened in me is I judged this girl and I was all over this other girl. How could she do this to my daughter? She found every button and just continued to push, 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 push. And then I also thought about my daughter and wanted to fix the situation. But then I remembered that I just needed to put a sock in it, listen to her words, listen to her body language, listen to her facial expression. And then I recognized this resistance in me and got curious. And the resistance in me felt like, oh God, I can't be raising someone who calls another child a bitch. That's not okay in our family. And what would other people say if they found out? Well, once my curiosity addressed all that was going on inside of me, then, only then, am I ready to open my mouth. So, as I opened my mouth, we unpaused the drama unfolding in the car, and I asked my daughter a question of genuine curiosity. I said, "How did that make you feel?" And then the tears just fell. She said how awful she felt about calling this girl a name. And then she said that honestly, the girl deserved it, which, okay, maybe she did. But then she recognized and said, Mom, I need to go and apologize to her. But Mom, I really need a good dinner and I need to go to bed early. What? My daughter went from clearly being out of her mind back to the sweet and thoughtful girl that I know. And so I learned that when I put a sock in it and become curious, that I create a safe space for my child to feel the full emotions of the complex human experience and regain her right state of mind. Okay, so we've looked at humility. We've looked at curiosity. And lastly, we have the third ingredient. Now, the third ingredient is to set an intention. Remember, my intention that I set with approaching middle school students as a teacher was that in everything I do, I wanted to set the stage for celebrating who each student is. Now, intentions are different from goals. A goal is something like, I want to hike the incline in Colorado Springs. And so you break that goal down into smaller parts and you work at it just one step after the other until you are ready to approach that incline and climb up the mountain. Well, intentions are a little bit different. Intentions are, how do I want to be as I climb the incline? For example, your intention could be, I really just want with every step to appreciate that my body can move. Or I intend to enjoy the beauty of nature as I climb the incline. Or I intend to be open-hearted, which means allowing myself to experience the challenge and notice when really those cuss words are coming up because you don't feel like you can do it, as well as being open-hearted to when you feel like, this is just majestic, look at what I'm doing. Intention is about how you want to be in the moment, and it can connect to a goal or not. Now, here's a story to show how I connected to my intention with my son. My neurodiverse son taught himself to shave. One day, he came downstairs, walked into the kitchen with a clean shaved face, and announced that he had shaved without cutting himself. Now again, push pause on this moment. Immediately, I was freaking out on the inside because he didn't know how to shave. No one had taught him. And I thought, oh my gosh, how dangerous was it for him to try all on his own? And then I wondered, why didn't he ask for his dad's help when his dad has been shaving for years? But I had put a sock in it and didn't let any of those questions come out so that I could listen to his words, his facial expression, his body language. And what I heard was that he was so proud of himself and excited to share this big news. Well, then I had to turn inward again and get curious about my emotional state at that point. And what I found is that I was sad. And I was sad because his dad didn't get that father-son moment of teaching this skill. But I reconnected to my intention. I set the stage for celebration. So unpause the situation unfolding in my kitchen, and I quickly said, wow, I'm so proud of you for learning to shave all by yourself. That's amazing. Great job. And my son just beamed from ear to ear. These were the words that he needed to hear from me in the moment. Well, one of my professors during my doctoral work offered a suggestion on setting an intention. He said that in order to set an intention, we must be able to connect to it throughout the day. And so he invited us to put a small rock in our pocket so that whenever we needed to connect back to our intention, our way of being, that we wanted to be in the present moment, all we had to do was reach down in our pocket and touch that rock. Now, some people make beautiful vision boards and put them up in their office, or they make these little crafty things that they can dangle from their purse. Whatever it is, I invite you to reflect on how you want to be as a parent during these preteen years. Write it down, draw it out, or put a rock in your pocket every morning so that you remember your intention. Now, setting an intention is not easy. For me, I like to go for a walk when I'm intention setting. Something about the rhythmic step, 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 step allows my brain to open up to new and creative possibilities. And so go on a walk and really turn inward and think about, what are my greatest gifts? What are the things that come most naturally to me? Those words, those gifts, those skills will be a part of your intention. And so we have these three key ingredients: humility, curiosity, and intention. So with all of this, gaining clarity is really about deep listening to hear the perspective of yourself, honoring that, hearing the perspective of your team, and putting into words who you want to be during these years. And if you want to break down these 3 key ingredients a little more, you can join a parenting group that runs the first of every month, and you can find that on my website, ambermattinglylivefree.com.
Wow, this is fantastic. And thank you also for breaking it down into 3 key ingredients. I love that: humility, curiosity, and intention. Those definitely seem like they're manageable. I know it's hard to sometimes rein in and keep our mouths shut when we want to say things. So I
Yes.
have been trying to utilize that. So thank you for this. So thank you so much for all these tips you gave, and thank you for everything that you do.
Oh, you are so welcome. And now for that promised item that every caregiver needs during this time. I mean, it's a simple item that you might already have in your kitchen. It's a cheap item that delivers amazing results, and it's a healthy item that you can use for numerous things. Now, I am not a spokesperson for this product, nor am I going to receive any type of payment for my promotion, but it is apple cider vinegar, of all things, right? Now, the apple cider vinegar must say on the bottle includes the mother. Now, here's how I use it with my preteens. I shake up the bottle, and then I take a cotton ball and put it on the cotton ball, just a little bit. And then I put it all over my preteen's freshly washed face. You can even do it twice a day. Now, avoid the eyes. And for some kids, it does have a smell. And so they don't like the smell. So maybe avoid the upper lip. But what apple cider vinegar does is it actually balances the pH of the skin and allows oils where they are needed while also removing the excess oils. This has cleared up my 2 kids' faces every time, and it really gives them a confidence boost. And I think their face and your wallet will thank me for it.
Well, that is an amazing tip. I will definitely be utilizing that with my preteens. So thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Mattingly, for this incredible opportunity to be able to listen and learn together. Again, if you go to her website, Amber Mattingly, livefree.com. There's more information there. And she has prepared also a worksheet that is available on Independence website. And the link is also in the comments. So, and thank you for everything that you do and for being an inspiration to all of us and giving us 3 practical tips plus the bonus tip as well.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so thankful for you all and the work that you do in the world with our military families.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye.